Good morning, Masechet Pesahim. Good morning, Masechet Pesahim. Amoud Yomi. We are today in. We are in Mem Zayin Amoud Aleph. A little background information, what we spoke about yesterday. We're really in the middle of the page. We are in the first word that says Rechoka Nami Hitiru, and then I have the word Metiv. So it's really in the middle of the page. Rechoka Nami Hitiru Metiv. This is our Amoud of yesterday, actually. The Amoud of today is Mem Zayin Amoud Bet. Mem Zayin Amoud Aleph. In the middle of the page, Rechoka Nami Hitiru Metiv. Okay, what are we talking about? Are you allowed to cook on a regular Yom Tov for the next day? Please listen well, because you need this to understand the whole page. Today is Yom Tov, tomorrow is Chol. Are you allowed to cook today for tomorrow? Really, no. What happened if you did cook? So it's a machloket Rabba and Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, you did an Avera. You cooked on Yom Tov, and even though it's permitted to cook on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to cook for tomorrow. In other words, if you finished your meal, you are fully satisfied, you are not hungry, and you cook for tomorrow, you just cooked on Yom Tov, which is the same as cooking on Shabbat. So therefore, you get makot. So far, so good. That's the opinion of Rav Chizda. Rabba says, hu'in, since. We're going to be dealing with that a lot today. Since means, since something could happen that I needed to have cooked for today, so I'm actually not liable for having cooked today. Since it would be that a guest could come to my house, and so I cooked. Nobody came. Yeah, but somebody could come. And if somebody could have come, that turns out that the food that I cooked was actually for somebody. Good morning, John. You're right on time. We just started.
Did you really?
There was a breakfast, there was this. Don't ask, okay?
There's a difference between cooking and warming?
A huge difference, yes. Cooking. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook a piece of chicken?
Right. No, but my question is, you said from one Yom Tov to the, you cook for one Yom Tov?
I have a raw piece of chicken. Raw. Yeah, I cook it today to eat on Yom Tov Malach. Now I ate, I'm full. I'm cooking the raw piece of chicken and I'm not eating it. I'm going to eat it tomorrow. Rav Chizda said you did an Avera. Rabba said you didn't do an Avera. You know why? Because since somebody could show up to your house, and therefore you're going to need to give him food, Achshuma, a Moroccan that he doesn't have food in his house to give to a guest. Like we said yesterday, some Moroccans have food, platters set aside, never to touch them. It's only if guests come, we have what to put out. Some people have couches that you're not allowed to sit down, it's only if a guest come. You ever heard of that show?
On the couch. And they had a cordon in the living room.
You're not allowed to go there. If a guest comes, that's where he sits. Yeah? So since somebody could come, said Rabba, who eat if somebody could come, therefore it's mutar to cook, you're allowed to cook. You shouldn't do that, but if you did it, you didn't get makot. Asks on this Rabba to Rav Chizda, you're saying it's not allowed to cook, Rav Chizda? This is where I wanted to get to. What about when you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat? Shabbat, you cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Shabbat is Yom Tov is Friday. Shabbat is Shabbat. You can't cook on Shabbat. You're allowed to do an Eruv Tavshilin, and you're going to cook on Yom Tov, and you're going to bring it to Shabbat, use it on Shabbat. Why do you do that? Well, Rav Chizda is going to say, actually, you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat. What I told you before is you can't cook Yom Tov to Chol, but Yom Tov and Shabbat, according to Rav Chizda, are one thing. So you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat. You're allowed. But since we don't want to let people start cooking for the next days, because if I let you cook from Friday to Saturday, you're going to cook from Monday to Tuesday. Monday, Yom Tov, Tuesday, regular day. So we make you do an Eruv Tavshilin. You're going to take a piece of bread, you're going to take a matzah, you're going to take an egg, you're going to take a can of tuna. You're going to say, through this, I'm allowed to cook. What is that? That's nothing. That's the Rabbanan HaHeker that allows you to realize, oh, here there's some special reason why I can cook. That means I can't cook in a regular place. That's Shitat Rav Chizda. Got it, God? Rabba doesn't agree with that. Rabba holds up hu'in. Since somebody could come on Friday afternoon, Yom Tov, so I'm going to cook and I'm going to use it for Shabbat the next day. It's no problem. That's what we're holding. Now we're going to be asking questions on these opinions, okay? So now we're going to Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, like I told you. Mativ Rav Mari. Rav Mari asks a question. Shte alechem enan nichalot lo pachot nishnayim v'lo yoter al shelosham. There was on the Chag of Shavuot. Chag of Shavuot, there was a mitzvah to bring 2 chalot. And they could be eaten either on the second day of baking or the third day of baking. Never more and never less. Keitzad nefot erev Yom Tov. If they were baked on Friday, nechalot the Yom Tov. If Shabbat was Yom Tov, if Friday was erev Yom Tov, a little complicated, huh? You guys are coming in the middle of something, but you can stay. The Torah and the Neshama understand. Give him a seat. So let's say Yom Tov was on Friday, and you are cooking from Friday. You're making the breads for Shavuot. In the Beit HaMikdash, there was 2 chalot that need to be brought to the Beit HaMikdash. When do you cook them? You cook them on Friday. You can't cook them if Yom Tov was on, let me read it again.
On Shabbat.
Kitzah, nefot erev Yom Tov, nechal b'Yom Tov. Sorry, regular day. Yom Tov's on Wednesday. So we cook them on Tuesday. Cook them on Tuesday, you eat them on Wednesday. That's Lishnaim. That's the situation where the bread would have been cooked on one day and eaten the next day. So it's eaten on the second day of the baking. Chal Yom Tov liot achar Shabbat. But if Yom Tov was on Shabbos, Yom Tov was on Friday, and Shabbat is the next day. Now you can't cook them on Friday. You can't cook them on Shabbat. You got to cook them on Thursday. Yom Tov nechalo Yom Tov shlosha. This is when it's going to be eaten on the third day. So either it's going to be cooked the day before Yom Tov, eaten on the second day, or it's going to be eaten 2 days before the Yom Tov, which was Thursday, or Monday, Sunday. It was Shabbat. Chad Yom Tov liot achar Shabbat. Sunday. So I need to cook them on Friday, and then it's going to be Shabbat, and then I'm going to eat them on Yom Tov, which is on Sunday. Either way, you're eating them on the second day, you're eating them on the third day. Because you can't cook them on Shabbos, you can't cook them on Yom Tov. The Gemara says, now here's a svara which we need to understand. Here's a kushya on Shitat Rav Chizda. Okay, listen well. Via marzo ke Shabbat nasin b'Yom Tov. If you say that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat, Friday for Shabbat, hashta de Shabbat b'Yom Tov share, the Yom Tov b'Yom Tov mibayea. If you can cook on Friday to Shabbat, why can't you cook on Yom Tov itself, Friday to Friday? I'll explain what we explained before. Okay, so we're talking about now if you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov to Shabbat. That's the question. Rav Chizda says you're allowed to. It's one kedusha. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to cook on Shabbat. Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook. But what about the next day Shabbat? Can I cook from Friday to Yom Tov? That's the question. Rav Chizda says yes. It's all one big holiness. The holiness of Yom Tov is one thing together with Shabbat. So you can cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat, no problem. You need to do an Erev Tavshilin to make sure there's a heker, like we said before. And Rav Chizda said, and Rav says that's not the reason. You can't cook from Yom Tov Shabbat. You can only cook for now. You can only cook what you need this second. So when I'm cooking on Friday, why am I allowed to cook on Friday to eat on Shabbat? You just told me, Rabba, I can only cook for what I need this second. Well, the answer is, it's true that I'm full and I'm not eating. But Yonatan could show up in my house, knock on my house, come in, take a tea. I have nothing to serve him. I need to have some cookies, some cakes, some challahs. Maybe there's a achnasat ochim over here. So I'm really cooking for now, according to Rabba. Nobody came, so I didn't do any soup. I'm cooking on the eventual possibility that somebody might show up, so I'm allowed to cook. And if nobody showed up, so I'm allowed to eat on Shabbat. That's what the Rabba holds. Rabba is going to now use this whole situation of Yom Tov, of Shavuot, the breads, to disprove Rav Chizda, seemingly. And he's going to say it like this. 1 second, Rav Chizda. You're saying you're allowed to cook from Friday to Shabbat. Yeah? So why can't you cook from Yom Tov to Yom Tov? Friday, Yom Tov to Shabbat, you're allowed to cook. So why can't you cook from Yom Tov itself to Yom Tov? Meaning, the breads that we're bringing on Yom Tov, which is Friday, you can't cook them on Friday. You got to cook them the day before. You got to cook them on Thursday for Friday. Why? If you're already allowed to cook from Friday to Shabbat, so cook on Friday for Friday itself. Now, so the fact that you can't do that, you see that that's not, it's the reason why you're allowed to cook is not like you said. The reason like what I said, all this Rashi is saying. And he's going to say the svara a little bit more. I didn't tell you one thing, which I'm going to tell you now. The breads are baked, then there's korbanot, which are brought, 2 sacrifices. The korbanot are performed, everything, the service of the korbanot, and then the kohanim eat the bread. So actually, when you're making the bread on Yom Tov of Shmini of Shavuot, you're not making it for eating it this moment. You're making it for eating in another hour, 2 hours later, or 3 hours, or 7 hours later when the Kohen is going to fit.
This is only for bread, David, or this is for cooking in general?
We're talking only about the breads which are brought as the korbanot.
So this is only for bread.
No, not bread. It's not for bread at all. It's in the Beit Mikdash. Once a year, there was loaves of bread which were the korban, and they are given only to the Kohanim.
But this is sugya right now is about cooking bread from Yom Tov to the Yom Tov
No,
to Shabbat.
general cooking.
So in the fact that the old days they didn't have the means to be able to store things for a long period of time, so it was normal for them to cook something that would be eaten right away, and it would not be in quantities to be able, like today, Baruch Hashem, when we cook, you don't cook for one meal. You cook and you don't always have extras. So is this still considered today where we have fridges, we have freezers?
Well, bread can last without a fridge and a freezer.
No, I'm not talking about bread.
And regular foods.
I'm talking food now. Food like meats.
Well, you see that the Torah doesn't let you cook on Shabbos. So you see that on Friday you cook for Shabbat. I understand, but you see that that's not the reason why the Torah is allowing you to cook. For whatever reason, God decided, but it's very... Al Pi Kabbalah, it's why there's a weekday, why there's a Shabbat, why there's a Yom Tov. But the reason why you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov is not because of storage, because the proof is on Shabbat you can't cook, and therefore in the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah you can't cook. So it has nothing to do with storage. It has to do with the reason, what birurim we need, what level in order to connect today. Shabbat is an inherent holiness. So in order to connect, you got to cut off everything. On Yom Tov, there's a different type of holiness where you're allowed to do certain things and it's not going to cut off your connection. Basically, that's what it is. So here I wanted you to understand the svara. So Rabbi is saying, Rav Chizda, you see you're wrong, Rav Chizda. I'm telling you, you can only cook for now. And when I'm cooking for Friday, I'm cooking for now, this second. And I'm not using it, I'm going to use it tomorrow. But you that you say you're allowed to cook from today to tomorrow, it should be you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov itself to the same Yom Tov. And on this, Rav Chizda will answer back, no, it's different. Shanei atam damakra lechem velo legavoa. Nah, Rav Chizda fires back, that's not true at all. What is the permission of cooking on Yom Tov? As the pasuk says, Kol Asher, let's read the pasuk together in Torah Or, look on the right side. וביום הראשון מקרא קודש וביום השביעי מקרא קודש יהיה לכם כל מלאכה אשר לא יעשה בהם אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש הוא לבדו יעשה לכם. You're allowed to cook lachem, for you. You're not allowed to cook for the Beit HaMikdash. When I'm cooking for the Kohen, you know why. Rav Chizda says you can cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat. So for sure you can cook from Yom Tov to Yom Tov, even if it's later in the day. Why can't I cook for the Kohanim, the breads? Because that's not what the pasuk says. Kol asher yochal lachem. When I'm cooking for the Kohen is not eating his stuff. The Kohen's eating God's food. When I give back my meiser, when I give my truma, when I give my donation, it's not my money. And it's not the Kohen's money. It's not his. It's Hashem. I'm giving back to Hashem. Why do we do that? Hashem gives you so much in life. We tell you give back. If it helps you work on your faith. When you don't give charity and don't give to the Kohen, you don't give to Levi, what do you mean? It's all me. It's all you. Let's see how you're going to do. But if I give 10%, I give whatever it is, I'm giving charity, I'm giving to the Kohen, I'm giving to Levi, I'm giving to the Maaser Ani, you're reinforcing your belief, the fact that Hashem is giving me this. So I'm giving back to Him. Tenu mishelo, shatar shelcha shelo. Give Him, because everything is His. That's what the Mishnah says. So therefore, it's not that I can't cook from today to today. I can, but I can't cook from today for the Beit HaMikdash. That's all. That's the way Rav Chizda will answer. Just a little small thing before we go to the next thing. Well, there is an opinion that Rashbag says you're actually allowed to cook on Yom Tov for the Kohanim. So how does he learn the pasuk? That's the question. So he says, what the pasuk says, cook for you, that's including the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash is part of the Jewish people. And how does he learn? He says that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov you're allowed to bake the breads on Yom Tov. So he says that what it means, you can't cook for goy. I had the shayla this Pesach. Somebody wanted to invite a cousin, and the cousin, Nabach, married a non-Jew. So I want to invite them. And in general, it's not a bad thing to invite somebody's married to a non-Jew. It's a mitzvah, especially if they're receptive and they want to hear. You never know what good you could do by inviting them and telling them and mechazik them. Maybe, she'll convert or he'll convert or the kids. It's not gonna harm by trying to mikarev. Of course, everybody knows the situation and knows the people they're dealing with, what type of it is. But on Yom Tov, there's a different problem. On Sukkot, they want to invite. Two things on Sukkot. On Sukkot, you can't invite a goy. Nothing to do with the fact they're going.
Why is that?
Because you can't cook for a goy on Yom Tov. You're allowed to cook for a Jew on Yom Tov, but you can't. That's what it says over here. Let's just recap what we said. We had a whole discussion.
So first night of Yom Tov, you can't. You cook it the night before?
No, you can never. Excellent.
You're not cooking for the goy. You're cooking for.
I understand. I'll explain to you. We just discussed the whole discussion of that. Can you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat in the Beit Mikdash? So Rav Chizna answered, you can't cook for the Beit Mikdash. That's why. Don't ask any questions to me. But there's another opinion. It's Rashbak. He says you can cook for the Beit Mikdash, even though the pasuk says Kol Asher Yochal Lachem, cook for you. So that means, and he says you're allowed to bake the breads on Yom Tov Friday for the Beit Mikdash. So how does he do? What does he do with the pasuk Lachem? Cook for lachem and not for a goy. You can cook for yourself and not for a goy. That means that on Yom Tov you have permission to cook for yourself. You can cook for your mother. You can cook for your kids. You can cook for your grandmother. You can cook for your children. You can cook for the shul. Cook for anybody who's Jewish. You're allowed to cook, even at the Beit Mikdash. But a non-Jew, you're not to cook. It's like cooking for yourself on Shabbat. There's no permission. So now Chachamim say you can't invite a goy to your table on Yom Tov, and the reason is because since you're allowed to cook, and you're going to say I'm not cooking. Me, everything, and by the way, everybody today, here's where everybody today cooked before. Nobody's starting to cook on Yom Tov. Back then, they used to actually cook on Yom Tov. Now it's getting to widget. Today, there is more storage. It's easy to preserve it. We're cooking, the fridge, the freezer, everything. But back then, they used to cook. So since they used to cook, I'm cooking for him, and this goy, I'm not cooking for the goy. It's very hard. You know that a woman, when she doesn't have enough food, she gets very nervous. Just put an extra piece of meat, put a little bit more bread in the oven. It's not a big deal, but now you're cooking for the goy, now it's getting to problem. Because of that, we cannot now start picking and choosing and saying, okay, if you're going to cook, you're not going to cook, you have a lot of food, you don't have a lot of food. Once we put the rule across the board, first day, second day, you're not allowed to invite a non-Jew to the sukkah. So what did I do in that case? What did I tell them? I said, listen, it's very sensitive because you don't want to offend somebody. You don't want to embarrass them. You don't want to this. So what I recommend is you call them back and say, I mixed up my schedule. We're actually not eating there that day. Will you come for Shabbat? Because on Shabbat, you're allowed to invite them. They invite them for Shabbat like that. They came on Shabbat and it was just a day or two later. So it was not, we still want to have you, but just not this day, this day. They don't realize the mechanics.
Two other scenarios. What if you have help? Let's say you're hosting 20 people, you have help. Then at the end, there's leftovers. If the cleaning lady, she's eating, so you're not allowed?
It's a great question. I don't have it clear in my mind right now. Could be there's a difference between she's not at the table, she's not here, she's help, and there's leftover food. Could be a difference.
Did you cook for
We had a situation for Simcha here. When you cooked for Simcha, we had 8 people serving. They're all going, so there were leftovers, and usually the norm is they. At the end of their service, they serve themselves.
It's a good question. That's why it's good to we speak of these things. The question comes up, we look it up, and we know what to next.
True scenario. Like there's someone that I've invited to my house many times he's brought somebody else with him without my knowledge.
A goy.
No, not a goy. What if it happens that it's a goy or halachically a goy? What happens in that sense? Like you tell him, no, I'm sorry, you cannot sit at my table.
Good question.
And I didn't cook for him. I didn't know he was coming.
I think that if somebody comes, you didn't invite them. He says over there, you can't be mazmin, you can't invite a goy. If somebody came in your house, he's there in your house, what are you going to do? I don't think it's the same. The issue is on the inviting. It's forbidden to say, come and have them sit with you. We'll have to check these things out.
Well, the real thing that's forbidden is cooking for a goy. As long as you had no notion of the goy coming.
The real prohibition is cooking. But we already forbid you to invite, lest you might come to cook.
But you're right. In the old days, when there wouldn't be enough food, the woman would cook.
I'm telling you, if a woman is nervous, the woman is her food, by the way, it's very important to compliment and to thank. You know how much they work to make the food and to take care of things. It's you don't realize how much it is. And they're just waiting. They're waiting every second for a compliment and a good word and something like that. And if there's people that don't know how to appreciate and they're a little bit tough and it's not how I like it, and if it's a soft woman and she's not so yirat shamayim, she didn't know the halachot so much, she could do things. The Gemara speaks about that. The Gemara says, be very careful not to put, the Gemara in Masechet Gitin, do not put extra fear in your house because you might eat non-kosher. Because there was once a guy who came and he wanted things his way and his wife didn't have it, she got taref and she gave him taref. What he has to eat. I'm not going to get yelled at by this barbarian. So she actually gave him non-kosher food because he was upset that the food wasn't.
On Shabbat speaks about the woman. Sometimes we're going to put turn on the fire
Exactly.
because there's not enough, and she doesn't want to make sure that she wants to make sure that the food is hot enough. All this puts pressure on them.
Yeah.
No one even realize that, but it's true.
Yeah. So in general, be chill. Don't be too.
Shabbat falls on Sukkot and you invite somebody.
So that's exactly what happened. Since you can't cook on Shabbat, and it was Sukkot, it was Sukkot Shabbat. So I told him invite them on Shabbat because you're allowed
On
to.
a regular Shabbat, not on the holiday.
No, I told him Shabbat Sukkot. Chol Hamoed, Shabbat Chol
No,
Hamoed.
Shabbat Sukkot.
Yeah,
so
why?
it's okay.
Because if you invite them in 1 month, what
Yeah,
happens?
you see.
But if I invite you this 2 days later, it wasn't so embarrassing for the people. And it was because since you can't cook on
Still
Shabbat.
Sukkot, but you can bring the non-Jew into the sukkah.
Okay, that's a different story. According to spiritual, I'm telling you halakha. According to Kabbalah and all that, when you bring a non-Jew in the sukkah, the kedusha of the sukkah leaves.
Sometimes it's difficult because there's people that are in the process.
Okay, people in the process is a different level. Anyways, let's continue weiter. The Gemara says next. Shalach le Rab Chizda le Rabba. Now Rab Chizda is going to challenge Rabba. Biyad Rabbacha. Baravuna. So now he's asking the question. Mi amrinan hui. Are you saying hui? Again. What is Rabba's opinion? You're allowed to cook today, Friday, Yom Tov, for tomorrow, since maybe a guest is going to come. And once at my wedding, I sent out the invitations, and the guy didn't come to my wedding. I said, you didn't come to my wedding. He said, you're going to send me in the mail invitation? You come to my house and deliver the
That's for
invitation.
sure Moroccan.
And you sit down with a tea and a cookie, an old Moroccan. He didn't come to the wedding. You know, that's how you send me an invitation. There's people that's the culture. The culture is, you got to give out something, you got to give it. It's not, Ashkenazim don't have that, right? It's
You're not. Now it's email. It's paperless post.
If you don't
I think today even the Moroccans are becoming Ashkenazi a little
You
bit.
don't
But
invite them, they're mad. If you invite them, they're mad.
the kavod of the serving and having food and all that, that's what Rabbi says. So you're allowed to cook now so that maybe somebody's going to come. But the Gemara is asking, Rav Chizda is asking on Rabba, are you really allowed to do that? Yesh choresh terem echad hayevin ana mishum shmone lavim. There was a person, when at the bottom of Mem Zayin, there was a person that will plow, okay? One mound. Okay, he's plowing. And he's going to do 8 averot with the plowing. How can he do that? HaChoresh b'sho v'hamor. Number one, you're not to plow with an ox and with a donkey together. You're not to do that. If you want to plow with an ox alone, donkey alone, but you can't put them together. There's a lot of reasons why. One of the amazing reasons why I saw in the Mifashim is because the ox, first of all, it's because he's stronger. He's stronger, he's weaker, so it's a little bit hard for the hamor. Second is that the ox chews its cud. The bull chews its cud, and the hamor does not. So he's having an extra meal, and he's jealous that he's eating again.
Constantly chewing.
Yeah, he's constantly chewing. What? He's getting food and I'm not getting food? So he doesn't understand that he's chewing his cud. So he's a little bit, look how sensitive the Torah is on the embarrassment of the pain of the hamor, of the donkey. Anyway, so this guy, what did he do? He's plowing a hamor and a donkey together. Vehen mikudashim, they're owned by the Beit Mikdash. Not that it's only a regular hamor, it's a hamor and a donkey that are owned by the Beit Mikdash. One to be a korban and one for bedek habayit. I explain. A bull, an ox, can be brought as a korban. A hamor, non-kosher, cannot be brought. So one is owned for korbanot and one is owned as bedek habayit. When you give a hamor to the Beit Mikdash, the Beit Mikdash doesn't use it for sacrifice. The gizbar, the gabbai of the Beit Mikdash, takes it, sells it, takes the money for the reparation, for the maintenance, for everything we need in the Beit Mikdash. So these two things, now by using them, you have three avirot. One avira of plowing with a donkey and a hamor together, an ox together. One avira and 2 avirot of using things which are designated in Saka and are consecrated to the Beit Mikdash. Ukilayim, bekerim. Now what happens is, when you're plowing, so the dirt, covers over, sometimes you plow to soften the dirt, and sometimes you plow to make that the seed gets inside. There's two steps of plowing. One is you plow to soften it up, then we put the seed on top, and then we go plow again to flip it in and make it cover the dirt. So here, what he did is doing the second time of plow, and he's plowing kilayim. Kilayim is when you have, for example, wheat next to a vineyard. You can't interbreed, you can't crossbreed species. You're not allowed to do that. So you did kilayim and these things. So now he has a fourth avira of kilayim. Kilayim b'keren b'shvit, and it happens to be the 7th year. The 7th year, the land has to have shmitah. In Eretz Yisrael, you have the 7th year, which is a sabbatical year, which you're not supposed to farm. You're supposed to let land rest. You're supposed to rest. And the reason, by the way, was that people used to work, like we spoke before downstairs. People were involved a full day, especially farmers and people working outside, full day in farming. You know what it is to farm and to be a farmer? It's backbreaking work all day. So we give them.
Was that right?
Huh?
That was the moment when they would not be
Exactly.
would not work and they would go and study.
Twice a year. And also, once every 7 years, you're off. Go to the Beit Midrash. Take a year off, a sabbatical. Go learn. You know how it was? It was amazing. So they have one full year. That's one of the reasons. Also to give strength to the land. Shvit. So now you have Shvit, which is another avirot. So you have 5 avirot. And it's Yom Tov. So he did all of this on Shvit, on Yom Tov. and he's a Kohen and a Nazir. So he's a Kohen,
And the whole works.
he's a Kohen, and he's a Nazir.
Who put him in charge of the farming?
He's a Kohen, and he's a Nazir. He took upon himself to be a Nazirite, which is not allowed to go to a cemetery. And he's plowing in the cemetery. Okay? So you have 8 avirot over there.
So he's
Because
the
the Kohen
Chama.
can't go to the cemetery.
So he's the Chama.
So the Kohen can't go to the cemetery, and the Nazir can't go to the cemetery. So he has 8 avirot. Okay, how about this? The Nazir. Abetuma. V'yamrinan hu'in, acharisha lo lechayev. 1 second. You're telling me, Rabbi, this concept of maybe something could happen. Well, maybe something could happen on Yom Tov, which will take away one of the avirot. You'll have 7 and not 8. By the way, when we say 7 or 8 avirot or 3 avirot or 2, it's lashes. Don't forget, in the time of the Beit Mikdash, if you did something by accident, it's one thing. But if you're doing on purpose to spite, and there are witnesses, and they tell you exactly what your crime is, there was lashes. And lashes were 39 lashes. And if you have one action which has multiple avirot, it was 39 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. So each one makes a difference. And by the way, we wouldn't kill the guy. We wouldn't kill him. Okay, you can't take anymore? Go take a week off, come back and you get the rest. That's how it would be. By the way, so it was Torah law. It would almost never happen because nobody was really doing to spite. It's very, very rare, you know? So, and you have to warn them, there has to be witnesses. The witnesses have to know what they're warning for, and they have to know what the punishment is. Because if you tell a guy, even he's doing something which is chai mita, but it's chai mita of being strangled, hanging, which is the least of the 4 types of death penalties. There are 4 types of death penalties, and there's a more stringent one. So if you tell the guy, if you do this, it's death penalty, and you're going to be, it's going to be hanging. They're going to hang the person. And then it turns out that it was skila, that we throw the person off a building, or we off with the head. That was one of the ways of killing. So then he say that he's putter, he's off the hook. He doesn't get punished because 1 second, he was willing to do it for strangulation. He wasn't willing to do it for being pushed off a building. So therefore, you didn't even warn him the proper warning. He's off the hook. So it's actually very, very rare that a person would get the punishments. But
Mistrial.
huh? Mistrial. Miswarning. It was almost not mistrial. It was like you're. It's interesting. You have to be, and by the way, if they warned you the day before, or an hour before, or 10 minutes before, we could say the guy had a lapse of memory, and he's not focusing anymore, and he's actually off the hook as well. Okay, now here, if you want to tell me that the concept of ho'il, Rabba, what you're saying, that I'm allowed to cook on Yom Tov, even though I'm not going to eat because somebody could show up, so you should use that concept this year as well. Well, since it's possible that I might have birds, and the birds might be shechted, and you might have a mitzvah of covering the blood of the bird with the dirt. You know that if you ever go to Shrita, one of the mitzvahs of Shrita is the blood that goes on the ground, you got to cover it with sand or with dirt or with afar. So since I need this dirt, so I'm using this dirt to cover. And since on Yom Tov I could have some birds that are shechted, this guy, you could have shechted birds, or it could be shechted birds, or maybe I'm going to shech the bird to eat, because I'm allowed to eat. So I'm going to shech the bird, and I need to do this, so I'm allowed to take the dirt. So since I might shech the bird, and since I might need to cover the dust, cover it with dirt, and since I plowed it, so the plowing, when I'm plowing it, I'm taking it, I'm putting over here. The mechanics, the way this works is a little bit interesting, and I'll tell you how it works. If I remember well, it's like this. There is a menacha at tzricha gufa and menacha she'en tzricha gufa. Because this is not cooking, right? So you're only allowed to cook on Yom Tov. Who said you're allowed to take dirt? You're not allowed to cook.
No, but you're allowed to do anything
So-
that's related, no?
So it seems to be, you're asking a good question. But I'll tell you how the Mefashim explained it, B'Pashtim, is that this is a menachash, it's the menachash she'en tzricha gufa, and I'll explain. In Shabbat, it's not only that you do the menacha, it's the intent why you do menacha is a proper intent. It's called menachat machshevet. Machshevet means 3 things. It's menacha means it's actually a skill. So if you do it roundabout, it's actually not asur on Shabbat. For example, if you write with your left hand, you didn't really do an avera. If you write with the right hand, that's an avera. Second is it has to have the intent of what you're doing it for. Menachat tzricha gufa, not a roundabout indirect way. For example, plowing on Yom Tov and plowing on Shabbat is asur. There are 39 labors which are asur. One of them is plowing. But let's say, and plowing is, what's the purpose of plowing? Plowing to get the seed planted. That's called plowing. But what about if I'm plowing for something which is not for plowing? I'm plowing, but it's an indirect
To have the
usage.
earth, not
I'm gonna
to have the hole.
exactly. To have the earth, not to have the hole. For example, we said read every Friday night in Mishnayot. If you put out a candle, what is the real menacha of putting out a fire? What is that? What is the? It is actually to light it better afterwards. When you want to make a coal, you want to make a pecham, you actually light the wood, and at a certain point you put it out, and now it's a really good combustible piece of wood that becomes a very good coal, and you can use it afterwards. So the putting out is only for the purpose of relighting. What about what about if you have the guy sick? Patur. If there's the guy has a candle in his house and there's Nazis outside, so he puts out the candle. So obviously it's life-threatening, do whatever you want. But now he comes out, Rabbi, was it nasu? No, it's nasu, because it was an indirect. It was maracha she'enat tzricha gufa. You put out a candle not for the purpose of relighting, for an indirect purpose of saving yourself from the guy outside. The guy's sick, he can't sleep, so you put out the candle. It's not asu, it's asu de rabanan, but it's not asu de waita. So here too, when you're plowing, what way are you plowing? You're plowing in a way that's not for the purpose of plowing. I'm plowing, maybe, because maybe I'm going to have birds to cover, and maybe I'm going to have to cover this dirt. And therefore, I'm plowing for the dirt, not for the hole. So therefore, it's an indirect melacha, and it should be patur. So since we say in the eventual situation where there might be birds to cover the thing, well, I would have needed dirt, and the dirt is over here because I plowed, so the plowing wasn't asu. Give the guy 7 makot and not 8 makot. So the Gemara answers on this. We're talking about little rocks. You plowed, and sometimes you have little rocks which are actually fertile enough to grow something out, but you can't use them for covering blood because they're a little bit wet, they're a little bit small, and you could actually plant something inside there. So there is a need to plow, but you can't use that for the mitzvah of covering the blood of an animal, which needs to be only covered with dirt or with soil or with afar. So that's what we're talking about here. So that's why you get makot, because it's not going to be a meracha she'nitzcha gufa, because you can't use that for covering the blood. The Gemara says, if that's true, well, if that's true, you could crush them up. It's true that they're little hard rocks, but if you grind them, you're going to turn them into dirt, then you could use them. So, the kitisha bi Yom Tov mishare. 1 second, who said you're allowed to crush on Yom Tov? The Gemara says, like I spoke before, when you do things in a roundabout way, it's actually permitted. So you're going to crush them backwards. You're going to crush them. Somebody came to me recently on Yom Kippur. It was Yom Kippur. A guy came to the shul. His father fell down the stairs. It was a big guy. What'd I do? He says, how bad is he? He says, he's very bad. I said, right away to the hospital. Yom Kippur, can't go. I said, right away to the hospital. You never know, a broken limb. He didn't go.
Mr. Babet fell pretty badly last on Sukkot.
I didn't know that.
Who?
Who? Mika's father?
From Bet Hambam. No, from Bet Hambam, the old guy.
Oh, really?
In the wheelchair.
And he fell in the shul.
Yeah, right outside the shul. He decided to take the electric one. He went back to the electric one.
No.
I swear.
When did he take it?
Last, like 2 weeks ago, during the first Chag of Sukkot. My father-in-law stayed with him for a while.
He went back before the electric or after the electric?
He went back to the electric.
After he fell or before he fell?
No, before he fell. Like that day he showed up with the electric one. Yeah, so people have been visiting him. I just wanted to...
Okay. So now so what did I tell the guy? Call right away the ambulance, but call with your left hand at the pinky. It's not the regular way of calling, so it's not kilachar yad. When you do something kilachar yad, it's actually fine. So here you could crush them kilachar yad, because crushing, don't forget, when you plow it and your intention is for the plowing, the intention is the hole, the real plowing. But here you plowed it for the dirt, so that's not for the real purpose. That would be mutter. But now to crush them, that's really for the purpose of crushing. The purpose of crushing is to get small, fine flour, fine dirt. So here, crushing with the left hand. Crushing with the left hand would be mutter. The Gemara says bitsunma. We're talking about hard rocks that can't be crushed. The Gemara says tsunma bazriya. Tsunma, but tsunma is not bazriya. You can't plant anything in tsunma. So why is the guy plowing in tsunma? So the Gemara says minimana tsunma minimana v'afar tichuach minimata. So really, we had hard rocks on the top and we had dirt on the bottom. The Gemara says v'tipuk mishum afar tichuach. If that's true, so then what are you making me a whole mess over here? That you see that over here, that underneath there was soft dirt, and the soft dirt, if it's soft, you don't need to crush it, and when you plowed it, it could be used eventually for covering the blood. And Barabashi betina. So actually, what we're talking about over here is we're talking about mud, and the Gemara says betina bazriya. You can't plant anything in mud. The Gemara says matunta, certain type of wet soil, which is a little bit like mud. You could actually plant inside of it, but you can't use it to cover the dirt, and therefore this is how Rabba is going to get away with the question. I'll just recap all this one more time. Rabba is asking the question. Rabba says, on Yom Tov you're allowed to cook now, even though you finished eating. Why? Because a guest could show up, and if guests show up, I could use that. If a guest show up, so I didn't do something asur, even though it's not for me, maybe it could happen. So why don't we say when the guy is plowing with all of these funny situations, when he's plowing, he gets an avera for plowing on Yom Tov? No. Maybe he's plowing to cover, he's using the dirt, and maybe he's going to cover some chicken that he's going to share. The Gemara answers, we're talking about over here, Rabba has no choice. He's going to have to try to answer this, because according to Rabba, it's a real problem. So Rabba's going to say, you know what, I'm going to tell you what this is talking about. This is talking, enachinami, you're right, if it would be regular dirt, he would be potter from it. But this is not talking about regular dirt, it's talking about a very wet soil, which is wet enough and solid enough to plant and something can grow out, but it's not at all like a dust or dirt. They could use it to cover the animal, and therefore the situation doesn't apply over here. But you are right. If it would be a regular soil, it would be patur. I think we'll stop here. Chazak.